Hello friends, welcome to Cloud Computing 101 by Simply Clouded. Today's topic is virtual machines versus containers. Let's understand this concept by an example. Imagine you live in a large house with a lot of space and you name your place server apartments. Now imagine you put out an advertisement to rent out a part of your apartment and you get response from two tenants with the same basic need. They need a place to sleep. Let's talk about our first tenant, Mr. VM. What is the requirement of Mr. VM? He requires a room with a bed, attached bathroom, extra walking space and everything in a house. Mr. VM is adamant about having his own walls and roof. Mr. VM wants to design his room according to his needs. He needs every luxury there is. What should the owner of server apartments, which is you, consider before giving a complete room to Mr. VM? Only limited number of such rooms can be provisioned. Mr. VM will block a dedicated part of the house. Each room has an extra bed which will not be used since Mr. VM takes the whole room. And of course, Mr. VM will be charged extra for using dedicated resources. Let's talk about our tenant number 2, Mr. Tainer. What is the requirement of Mr. Tainer? Mr. Tainer requires a bed to sleep in any corner of the house. Mr. Tainer requires minimum space and only necessary resources to stay at the house. What else? That's it. That's all Mr. Tainer wants. Now, Mr. VM lives in a large room alone with all resources available at server apartments. Mr. Tainer only uses one bed and minimum resources required. It is difficult for Mr. VM to consider changing apartments. Mr. Tainer can change apartments in a matter of few minutes. Hence coming to the concept of virtual machines and containerization. Let's say I want to run my application on a virtualized environment server. In this case, just like a server apartment. And I'm confused with my choice of host or relating to our example, my choice of tenant. Relating to our example, virtual machine is Mr. VM, who runs a complete operating system including its own kernel. They are a hardware level virtualization. They start up in minutes and they're heavyweight. Whereas containers in our example is Mr. Tainer. Container is an environment that runs an app and only the files necessary to run. All containers share the host operating system. So it's an OS level virtualization. A container starts up in milliseconds and it is very lightweight. Example of a virtual machine is Amazon EC2 instances or Azure virtual machines or Oracle VirtualBox, whereas the example of containers are Docker containers. This is a diagrammatic representation of virtual machines and containers. If you notice the difference, a virtual machine has a hypervisor and 3 virtual machines have 3 separate operating systems. Whereas in containers, there's a single operating system on top of which there is a container engine only giving necessary resources to 3 different containers. Thank you for your time, guys. Please like, share, and subscribe for more.